This week on Pluribus, Carol attempts to make contact with her fellow survivors. The others need some space. Carol goes into detective mode and makes a shocking discovery, and a milk carton may be the key. And as always, I'll share insights from the official Pluribus podcast about this week's episode. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel for the first time. Subscribe so you don't miss next week's Pluribus video and my upcoming reviews. We're at 135 subscribers and I would love it if you would join us. So with that out of the way, let's begin the video as I recap, break down and review Pluribus episode 5, Got Milk. Roll the intro. So the episode opens with a sweeping shot at the hospital done as a warner. We start with a man in a hospital bed drinking out of a carton of milk, which does become relevant later, before going down the corridor past various people in the hospital getting on with work and specific tasks, before landing on Carol, who is waiting in a reception area. And she is waiting there for news on Zoja and her condition and how she is doing. While she's waiting, a phone behind her on the desk rings, and when Carol realizes no one else is going to answer it, she answers it instead. And it's Lakshmi, one of her fellow survivors, who is calling to berate Carol. She's upset that Carol once again made her son upset and made her cry. She says, "You made everyone cry and you gave your chaperone a heart attack. What is wrong with you?" Clara's like, "Well, she isn't my chaperone and she's doing okay. Thanks for asking." Lakshmi is confused as to why Carol does such things. Are you mentally unwell? And Carol tries to tell her, "Look, I discovered something important. There might be a way to reverse this entire thing." But Lakshmi hangs up. She doesn't care what Carol has to say. She's just upset that Carol made her son cry and says, "Don't you ever make my son cry again," and hangs up. Carol is visibly frustrated as she previously tried to convince Lakshmi, among the other survivors, to take action, to do something, to work together to reverse this entire thing. But as of yet, to no avail. She also tells one of the others to not give little Miss Sunshine her number again if she asks, and one just kind of stares in her direction, which is perhaps the first indication that all is not well between the others and Carol. And the next indication comes right in the next scene, where Carol visits the room that Zoja is in. She's currently unconscious, and she asks one of the workers in there, "Will she be okay?" And they reply, "She will be fine." Just that. Very short, blunt, and cold. And this is the closest yet we've seen to the others being rude to Carol. Very passive aggressive, arguably. And this suggests that something is not right. Shortly after this, Carol falls asleep in the waiting room. And while she sleeps, we see everyone in the hospital, workers and patients alike, exiting, filing onto buses and ambulances and leaving the hospital en masse. And this is a beautifully choreographed and orchestrated wanna that must have taken days to plan and rehearse. And in fact, on the official Pluribus podcast, they reveal it did indeed take them days to rehearse and shoot. They had to get up multiple times right at the crack of dawn in order to get the sunrise lighting correct and consistent. And as this occurs, there's some haunting choral music that plays. And on the official Pluribus podcast, this week's episode featured the composer of the show, who had some fascinating insights on how to compose for picture. He talks about finding the rhythm of a scene. I won't go into all of the info here, but if that sounds interesting to you, definitely give this episode a listen. It was really fascinating. But they also talk about this choral music that played over this extended wanna, which it turns out is from medieval canon and is meant to be uplifting, but is used here to represent the other's mind. And it works really well in this scene as they begin their exodus. It's something that sounds and appears hopeful and joyful, but has something underneath that's just a bit off when paired with the context of the others and what they are up to. We then cut to a time lapse of the sun moving outside the window as Carol sleeps, and she wakes to find she is completely alone inside the hospital. She walks around some corridors, is yelling, "Hello, is anyone there?" She dials 0 as she does to get hold of the others. But this time, it isn't someone on the other end. Instead, it's a recording. And it's a recording that says Carol can leave a message to request anything she might need, and they'll do their best to provide it. They reassure her that our feelings for you haven't changed, Carol, but after everything that's happened, we just need a little space. And this is passive aggressive to the max. The others at this point are done dealing with her directly, at least for now. I think they've figured out that they can't stop or control her, unlike some of the other survivors who are just given any material thing they want and are satisfied, like the guy who arrived on Air Force One in episode 2. And it turns out the official Pluribus podcast revealed that the voice of this recorded message is in fact Patrick Fabian, who played Howard Hamlin in Better Call Saul. This is an actor who Ray Seahorn, who plays Carol in this show, worked very closely with throughout the multiple seasons of Better Call Saul. And apparently they didn't tell Ray that it was him until the day she heard it on set as they were filming the scene. The director and the other people on the podcast, they joked about how they were disappointed Ray didn't break character during the scene. Afterwards, she said, "Was that Patrick?" And they all laughed. He has a very pleasing voice to hear, and so this works as a funny little cameo. I wonder if we'll see some other familiar faces from the world of Breaking Bad. Who would you like to see appear, or do you think it'd be a bit distracting if Aaron Paul, Bob Odenkirk, or Bryan Cranston were to just appear out of nowhere? I think they would be a bit distracting. Anyway, back to the show. The next scene shows Carol climbing a building in town, climbing to the very top, in fact, onto the roof, and she sees vehicles evacuating the city, and this is done as a 270-degree wanna, which shows a mass exodus across the freeways of the entirety of Albuquerque. She is now completely alone. The others have left. This shot is depicted at sunset with Carol on top of this rooftop, and it is unfortunately quite obvious, at least to me, that visual effects were used and that the background is not real. And the official Pluribus podcast, in fact, reveals that this was indeed the case, although they did build a rooftop on their backlot, which they shot Ray on, but it was really the compositing that I think let this shot down. The quality of the background itself is actually really quite impressive, and the visual effects are really well done. In fact, the cars and the buildings are almost photoreal and are a really good quality, especially for a TV show. But the compositing means the effect didn't quite work for me and did take me out of this. But I do have a bit of a particular eye for this kind of thing. It was similar to the reveal of Air Force One in episode 2, which again had a similar compositing issue. I think it just stood out to me because this show has such a precision to it, and that includes the visuals. They shoot so much for real, and so the elements that aren't, I find, stick out and can be a bit distracting. But still, I applaud the clearly high amount of effort and ambition that went into pulling this off. Did this distract you, or is this just me? Let me know in the comments. And Carol looks at this mass exodus and says, "Are you effing kidding me? Fine. Good riddance. F you." And the title sequence plays. We then cut to another timer, as has become tradition at this point. We are 8 days and 22 hours after the joining. Carol is back at home and she's writing notes down in a notepad. She's putting on makeup and an outfit, and we see that she is recording a message to the 12 other survivors. And she tells them about the discoveries that she's found over the past few days. She tells them that this joining can be reversed. And she doesn't know how to do it, but they so resisted telling her that they started crying worldwide, which she says means she must be on the right track. She also tells them that they can't lie, which is another thing she had discovered. She also has a message that is clearly partially directed at Lakshmi, where she says, "If you think everything is better now, with joy and love and peace worldwide, enjoy and relish that opinion because it might be the last one you ever have. Let's work together." And I think that comes to the crux of this. You know, as great as it is that everyone on Earth is working together seemingly for a common goal, for peace, love, and understanding, supposedly, this joining means the death of art, of creative expression, of freedom, of anything meaningful being created by humanity at all, ever again. After Carol's finished recording her video, she dials 0 once again and leaves a message to the others, instructing them to send the video to the 12 others around the world and to translate it into their local language, word for word, using subtitles. She said, "You're not going to like the video, and I can't force you to distribute this, but it would please me if you did, and I know you're kind of into that." She also says, "Conversely, if you don't do it, I cannot be held responsible for the biblically shitty mood that I will find myself." It's just great line. Just love it. And she says she'll leave the video card outside by the curb, and mockingly says, "Don't you worry, I'll be far, far away because God knows you need your space," and hangs up. I love this because she's taking control, once again, reintroducing herself to survivors and the other ones who haven't met her yet. sharing info. I'm very intrigued to see how the guy in Paraguay in particular will react to this video. But unfortunately, we don't see that in this particular episode anyway. A drone comes to pick it up and flies away. It's clear the others do not want to interact with Carol in person anymore, lest she upset them and create another worldwide incident. We then have a sweet little scene where Carol takes pillows back to her bed. They were previously on the sofa, and it's clear she hasn't actually slept in the bed since the joining and Helen passed away. She puts the pillows back and then gets onto the other side of the bed, which means that she potentially borrowed Helen's pillows, perhaps in an effort to feel close to her. She lies down and looks at the empty space in the bed next to her, and there are no words here, but you feel the deep loss, and the music, again, does wonderful work here. And you get the sense that Carol is always thinking about Helen, one way or another. And this is one of many really effective scenes where there's no dialogue, but a clear feeling is put across. Carol then wakes up to noise outside, and she finds there are wolves going through her trash. She ends up scaring them off by banging on the door with a golf club, and then calls the others once again and says, I want all the lights back on now, as they have still been turned off from a few episodes back when they said they were trying to conserve power. And shortly after she makes that phone call, all the lights come back on across Albuquerque. Then in the morning, she calls to get the trash picked up once she clears up the mess that the wolves had made. They call back and leave a message saying to remove the bags from your trash can, leave the bags 2 feet apart, weighing less than 70 pounds. She does this. She picks up the one bag that's in there and gives it a little shake and doesn't bother weighing it, but figures, what's the worst that can happen? And puts it outside. And a drone once again comes to pick it up, but it struggles to fly away because the bag is too big. And it ends up getting stuck on a lamppost and crashing and destroying itself. The official Pluribus Podcast reveals that they used real drones for all of these scenes, and they did actually crash one for real in this manner, and it did destroy itself. Though it was deliberate, a drone was harmed during the making of this show. And it was just another little funny moment that this show really excels at. I think that's something this show does really well, is balancing its tone. And it really works for me. You know, you have some really heavy stuff and there's some really heavy and intense stuff coming up later in this episode. But having these little interludes of humor really helps prevent the show from becoming too dour. Carol ends up driving into town to put the trash in the bin herself once she's cleared it up again. And she finds as she's doing this that the recycling bin is full of milk cartons for some reason. And she checks another and it's the same thing, and another. And then she checks a larger one and it's full of, once again, empty milk cartons. She tries to get a closer look inside and she manages to fall in gracefully, which, yes, did make me laugh. She has a look on the carton and sees there's a company name on it with an address, and that address is in Albuquerque. So she heads to that facility. It's abandoned, empty, as is everywhere in Albuquerque right now. And she sees strange, slightly viscous liquid from one of the recently used taps. She then goes into a different room and comes across some crows rummaging through some sacks and not sure what's inside. To me, it looked like salt. We then see Carol has brought one of these sacks home with her and is dragging it through a door, and she is getting a pH test from her hot tub outside. We then cut to her recording another video with her table full of various experiments and vials and liquids, and she records herself revealing what she's discovered. She says the liquid has a neutral pH like water. It was inside all of the discarded milk cartons. It's slightly orange in colour and has the consistency similar to olive oil. She has some pinch between her thumb and her finger. She has no idea what it is, but knows they were all drinking it, and asks the survivors to look in their local areas and check to see if the others around them are drinking it, and she almost guarantees that they would be. She theorizes that maybe it helps them stay connected. She then pauses a moment and says, what do you 12 think? Any response? Are you even getting these? How the F would I know? And she's clearly frustrated and exasperated. She then stops recording, gets up and ends up deleting the video, and then sits down again to re-record, presumably to come across as less aggressive and frustrated, as clearly that's not worked very well in the past for her in terms of convincing people and getting her point across. And she is trying to get all these people to work with her. It's now nighttime, and the drone comes again to pick up the video card for the video she's just shot, to presumably take it away and distribute it, although we have still no confirmation that the other survivors are receiving these videos. And after that, we see the wolves have returned. They are back. And this time, they start digging at Helen's grave in the garden. Carol screams no in horror once she realizes what's happening. She grabs her golf club and runs outside, but this time the wolves aren't budging and they simply growl at her, and they don't stop digging. So she is screwed. She runs back inside, grabs her keys, and runs out to the front to where the police car is still parked. And she tries to grab the shotgun that's in the front, but it won't come loose. Frustrated, she closes the door, turns on the engine, and rapidly pulls away. We see the wolves are continuing to dig up at where Helen is buried, when suddenly the police car bursts through the fence, sirens blaring, and the wolves scatter. And whew, man, this scene was intense. This was like something out of a horror movie. And yeah, this show really does just shift tones on a dime. This is such a nightmarish scenario. I can't imagine being all alone and your deceased loved one is getting dug up by hungry wolves for food. This is just hideous. And I have to mention the music in the scene, just excellent. And you can listen to the official Pluribus podcast if you want to hear them discuss the wolves theme music for this scene and the process for filming with the wolves, which was a challenge. Carol wakes up the next day, still in the police car. She realizes there was actually a simple button she needed to press to release the shotgun and mutters, "Son of a bitch." She also discovers on the police car key set that there is a key to remove the handcuff that's been on her left wrist this entire episode. Since, yes, she's had this on for at least 2 days now. She once again says, "Son of a bitch." And once again, the show turns its tone on a dime, going from intense horror to humorous realization. Carol then heads out and we see a montage of her collecting some paving stone from a abandoned building materials forecourt. She loads the police car boot up to the point where it is bouncing along and scraping on the road as she heads home. She then spends the day laying them down on top of Helen's grave. Carol is able to think clearly now and is able to protect her grave more permanently from further disturbances. The official Pluribus podcast revealed that Ray actually did a lot of this herself, despite the fact it was July when they shot and it was insanely hot. It is now nighttime, the sun has set, and we see Carol has gone inside and she paints a headstone with a tree and Helen's name on it. After placing it outside on top of the paving slabs, she has a moment, maybe the first one where we see she's actually sitting in the grief and the loss, just for a little moment. There are no words here, no dialogue, just brilliant acting from Ray Seahorn here once again. And the isolation of this episode has truly set in, and that does set this one apart. You really do miss the presence of the others, and particularly Zoja, as she has essentially been around since the beginning, well, at least episode 2. But we are close to the end now, and man, do I want to talk about that ending. So let's get to it. She goes back inside, pours a drink, sits on the sofa, and ends up knocking down the sack from the milk factory as she does. And she notices a barcode on its side. So she immediately heads out to Sprouts and tries to scan it at the till, but it says it's invalid. So she goes to the pet food aisle. She's trying to see if she can find a match for the sack that she's carrying with her. And she ends up finding it. It's dog food. It's clear the front and the back cover of the sack she's been carrying has been removed and ripped off, just leaving a trace of blue on the top where the original product image was. And she sees that the barcode matches. And once again, there's an address where it was manufactured. And once again, this location is in Albuquerque. So she heads over. There's a lorry backed in with an open shutter and she manages to squeeze inside. She's looking around with a torch, all the lights are off and it's the middle of the night. And this is like something out of Scooby-Doo at this point. I was expecting something or someone to jump out. Instead, there is nothing and no one around, and she opens up a large freezer door. And I did think at this point, what happens if she gets trapped in here? Does she have a mobile phone on her? I think we established early on that mobiles aren't working. So is there a landline inside this thing? Would the others come and rescue her, even if she could contact them? They might not be able to kill, but that doesn't mean they have to save her. It would certainly solve their what to do with Carol problem. But anyway, she gets inside the freezer and there are large shelving units filled with fresh fruit and produce. Presumably, this is one of the centralized locations Zoja mentions the others had moved all the food and essential medicines to in episode 3, before they restock Sprouts for Carol. We stay on Carol's face as she looks underneath the plastic sheet on top of one of these items. She puts the sheet back down slowly, steps back, gasps in horror, covers her mouth, and then we cut to black. And the first thing I thought was, oh, you bastards, you got me again with your cliffhanger ending. But once again, I can't wait for the next episode, so I guess it did its job. we do have an extra long wait now as this episode came out 2 days early. So, what did you think of this episode? I felt it was functionally similar to a bottle episode. I mean, no, it wasn't just one location like that infamous fly episode was from Breaking Bad, but it was certainly more self contained than previous episodes and mainly takes place in Carol's house with minimal dialogue. As mentioned earlier, you really do feel the lack of the others and Zosia's presence. The isolation of Carol being truly abandoned sets in with long shots of Carol alone at home or in the vast city. We do now know, though, that the others, at least in Albuquerque, drink some sort of mysterious liquid that they've manufactured themselves. The only time we actually see this depicted on screen is with the old man right at the beginning of the episode in the hospital bed, actually drinking out of a milk carton. What is this liquid? Is this something that helps them heal faster? Does it prevent them from needing to eat or drink for longer periods of time? There has to be some specific reason they're manufacturing it. Mixing it with dog food? Very weird. And that ending. Oh boy. What did Carol see? What could elicit that kind of gasping, shocked reaction, especially from Carol? Now, my immediate thought was a body or body parts. Another one I had, which is probably even more fanciful, would be the wolves dead and frozen with a note saying, "You're welcome, Carol," or something like that. But assuming the others are still playing by the earlier established rules, they can't kill not even a fly, so that is unlikely. Maybe some other kind of message from the others, but again, it would have to be something that would shock and disturb her to the point that she gasps, recoils, and steps back in horror. I, I really don't know, but I can't wait to find out. I also want to see the reactions of the 12 other survivors to Carol's video, and I'm guessing we will see Paraguay guy again in relation to that. I certainly couldn't have predicted the others just ghosting or breaking up with Carol, essentially, in such a definitive and passive aggressive way. And they probably see Carol as even more dangerous than they first realized, so are keeping a distance out of their own safety and self preservation, I expect. That's what makes the show so great. It's, at least to me, unpredictable. But what do you think? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments about where you think this show is going. That wraps up this video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like, pressing hype, and subscribing to my channel. It really does help me out and would mean a lot. I'll see you in the next one.